Here we can see the collage narrative has developed in a number of ways. So this is the Tate Modern reading room. You've got this kind of information signage. You've got the wayfinding, marking clearly, defining ways of approaching spaces. The Tate has structured its collage of works in four distinct themes: landscape, matter, environment, nude, action, body, history, memory, society, still life, object, real life. And this is a good example of how to kind of organize, information. So if you're interested in exhibition design, it could be worth, considering how that might work. Would you kind of decide to kind of think about an exhibition at the turn of contemporary, be ambitious with it, maybe look at how the exhibition is designed at the Beanie. It's very important to kind of get up and see shows in London, so just to be aware of that. So you might need to kind of take a kind of fact-finding mission, if you like, to a kind of physical space in London to have a look at exhibition design in particular. This is the experimental jet set. Special Collections Department of the Library of the University of Amsterdam. And here they're kind of setting up a proposal, printed visual material, but also how, the book is constructed, but how that maybe that book is seen, or that information is seen across 2 or 3 spaces here. So you can see on the left here, this idea of tables that go through spaces. And it's that sort of experimental thinking. I think this is really want to encourage you to consider, to kind of really think about the nature of what it is that you're, say for instance, you're interested in this sort of wayfinding instructional kind of design, how you can kind of completely rethink a space. So this is the exhibit, as it kind of appeared in the space. And you can sort of see how there's kind of real consideration as to the display of particular artifacts, the clarity, the readability of everything, how you're kind of clearly drawn into different spaces, how the particular archival cabinets would have been created, here with these sort of apertures to see pieces of work. And this is all something you can construct digitally. It's not necessarily, we want to see, an artifact made. For instance, say if you did do a proposal that was something like this, then you'd have to use the 3D workshops, making workshops with Ben Fletcher to consider how you might, start to construct an object that contains, you might want to make a table that contains books, and you might want to make a book that goes in that table, and then it might be a kind of proposal. Your presentation pack at the end might be a proposal for an exhibition that does X or Y in a particular museum, but you produce the book, and you produce the kind of presentation artifact, and you produce the presentation pack. Here we can see an exhibit for Tim Burton, big exhibition at the MoMA, a New York Department of Advertising and Graphic Design. Again, very singular research into the actual nature of Burton's work, and then impactful, playful ways of changing the space to, work with the actual idea. So here we can see ideas in Burton's work. Here we can see how just this kind of optical illusion here of putting these kind of dynamic diagonals into this space makes this kind of regular opening here into something that's much more like a kind of, with this lighting inside, a much more tunnel-like space. So one of the things that you can consider for this unit is creating a temporary setup, finding space, negotiating with staff, setting something up, and then documenting it. We're because the degree show's going up at the same time as this unit ends, we can't kind of set aside singular spaces for you to exhibit in your final at the end of the unit. But what you can do is set something up physically and photograph it, or even create something within Photoshop physically, creating kind of experimental images in Photoshop where you apply your designs to spaces. Now, if you can't do that already, there's plenty of support for that. And especially after Easter, there are diagnostic tutorials with CAT where you can access hopefully any information you're missing. But obviously there's a lot of tutorials online, and there's lynda.com about how you can kind of create specific comps in Photoshop. But if you make a kind of photographic record, you still have to have some sort of evidence of your kind of, an artifact made from this. So, yeah, we can discuss that later. Okay, United States Holocaust Museum by Ralph Applebaum Associates. This is from 1993. We have here a kind of, if you compare it and contrast it with the Tim Burton museum exhibit, another very appropriate response as to this kind of scale of that kind of horrific event. This is more Jonathan Barnbrook, but Barnbrook designed space that there's a show in the V&A called Disobedient Objects. Very, very interesting show about protest. One of the things you can consider, one of the things that's in the kind of 2-day workshop, is this idea of, within the reality bites scenario, is this idea of how you accommodate, or how you kind of raise awareness about issues or ideas or something that's wrong with the world, kind of going back to the social and cultural context element. Your piece of work, your actual work that you make, could be about that, but then you have to think about a social, about an issue, but then you have to think about how you work with that within a kind of spatial practice. And this is a very good example about how wall painting objects are displayed. There are display cabinets within the exhibition of making something that displays your idea. You may make a kind of amazing book, but how do you display it? How do you kind of offer information around it, put it in context, if you like, and to kind of create this narrative around the object that you've made.